All right, welcome into How Bout Wow. A Hall of Famer calls Dak Prescott a big mistake. That's Terry Bradshaw. I'll detail my concerns on that briefly. And we have a Cowboys player arrested. Let's do this with 9 weeks to go until week one. It's How Bout Wow.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?
Yeah, buddy. I'm Gavin Dawson from the Cowboys flagship station in Dallas-Fort Worth, 105.3 The Fan, G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 every weekday. And New Bear is the former all-academic SEC guard at Kentucky. How the heck you doing, buddy?
Well, I figured since you look like you're on a golf course, I'd get the Greg Norman stuff, and I've been watching my son play sharks and minnows at the pool. You're bringing it all together for me, man.
I love it. I'm live from Sun River, Oregon. This is my preferred vacation spot. And we were in Cannon Beach earlier, so we've traversed most of the state here over the last 48 hours or so around the 4th of July holiday. I do want to open up and just give condolences briefly to the victims of the flooding here in the Texas Hill Country and send our prayers to their families. Troy Aikman posted about it. I know the Cowboys and Texans have both made a substantial donation to the cause. Just incredibly tragic to see these stories as it continues to reverberate with more developments by the hour there out of Kerrville and surrounding areas. New Bear, just devastating.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's obviously trending where it is, but it's trending everywhere, right? And like you said, you just want to take a moment and really recognize what's important. On a weekend like this, where there's been a lot of conversation about a lot of different things, celebrating this country of ours. No matter how many hot dogs and how many high fives, sometimes you just got to take a moment and say thanks for where you are and say a little prayer for others and not be so fortunate.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity to be with family. It just that much more. I cannot imagine the devastation and the process in the years ahead. Okay, How About Wow is brought to you by our friends at Harbor Lights. Achieve the ultimate lighting solutions. If you have any needs, call 817-304-7041. But New Bear, we're going to start with this Terry Bradshaw story. I don't know what you make a Terry these days. I don't even think I got the link up properly. Oh, there it is. Steelers legend Terry Bradshaw calls Dak Prescott signing Jerry Jones big mistake as the Cowboys face a $240 million salary cap reality. And, I think what he's talking about is legit. I think we've done coverage of this story, Dak. I think he's got at best the second worst contract in the NFL, and that's even if you consider Deshaun Watson still relevant, because I don't think he's going to play another down under that contract, but it still exists. I don't think it's as bad as Jalen Smith's at $10 million. That guy could only had one leg, and Terrence Steele at $20 million. Zeke already showing signs of slowing down. They gave him a contract that wasn't exceeded at the running back position for a long time. To me, I just think the bigger problem here is that the Cowboys, aren't building around Dak like they need to in order to get a championship done around him, New Bear. Did I lose you? I got you.
I'm here. I think with the Sun River from Sun River to the Three Rivers, we might have just a little bit of heartbeat of a delay or so. But you were just talking about you don't know what to make of Terry Bradshaw these days, and the real famous quote is he couldn't spell cat if you gave him the C and the A. Well, I wanted to just go back to our title sponsor right now of this episode, Harbor Lights. Terry Bradshaw might actually think Christmas is in July at this point. I think, he's been trending a lot lately because he's been complaining about how bad of a coach Chuck Noll was and how mean he was and how he never shook Terry's hands, even though they won, 4 Super Bowls in 6 years and were really, for all intents and purposes, the dynasty that for most of, football time, all other dynasties were measured against. And I think Terry's in a really interesting spot. And the way that this dovetails into the Dak stuff is that you have a lot of these guys who are old timers who have seen some shit, who did some really great things as players, maybe even hung around and have won awards and been, lauded as broadcasters and are just still connected to the game in a meaningful way. And I think that everybody who just focuses on the $60 million man misses one thing. And that's just that Jerry Jones fam is completely okay with everything that we're saying, because there ain't no such thing as bad PR. And every time this comes up, they get bumped up in the algorithm, whatever channel, whatever platform. So that's the engagement farming side of it. The other side of it, and I know we're not going to do this today on the Sunday show, because the Sunday show at How About Wow is all the Cowboys news and no excuses, right? The Sunday show is a news-focused show, and we're going to get down as we get back in the swing of things this week into breaking down some position-specific stuff. I'm finally going to let go and let God with CD and GP versus mode like we're going to touch today. But the one thing about Dak that is really fascinating relative to the $60 million is that everywhere you look, someone is trying to either shove him way up, approaching the top 5, or push him way down and put some god-awful guy like Trevor Lawrence, the prince that was promised, in front of us. And the only thing that matters for Dak relative to the $60 million is that when to that NFC East ass, and as long as he can stay healthy this year, I think we're about to get a lot of answers, because like you said, they haven't built around him. But right now, with CD and GP, with a healthy Fergie, with 3 first-round picks in that offensive line, we're about to bleep around and find out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like here, and maybe Dak's 10, 15% overpaid. Maybe it's 30% overpaid, but I don't think it has to prevent them from winning. They won 12 games 3 years in a row with him at 40. And at the time, that was a market-setting contract. 4 years later, now it's at 60. So they were highly competitive. And I did a video a couple of weeks ago. If it wasn't for injuries in 21, 22, 23, they might have very well figured out a way to beat San Francisco or Green Bay in one of those playoff games, or had a higher seed that would have avoided those kind of matchups. I do think this organization has done a lot right, even though it's a head scratcher, why you would just cave to Dak Prescott, who not a top 5, not a bottom 5. I think he's somewhere between the 10th and 15th best quarterback. 2022 and 2024 weren't great, but I think, you really put him in a tough situation. You take pressure and space away from or you take space away from Dak and you put him under pressure, completely different player. And I think they've learned that, but they should have enough. I think when you talk about, hey, this is a massive mistake, what you're saying is, this is preventing you from winning. But I mean, you can get around the cap. Just ask Jeffrey Lurie. And if you make a $5 or $10 million mistake, it doesn't have to mean that you can't get to the top of the mountain.
Did you see what Eric Armstead said about Brock Purdy relative to Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver room in San Francisco, and the difference between Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy? He was talking about Brock Purdy being a full field read guy. He was talking about Brock Purdy, maybe because he's limited physically, being one of those dudes who's going to make it right based on what happens, based on the call, how the defense reacts, and how my guys go and fit into that, right? And what he said specifically was that Ayuk and Deebo and others said before Brock Purdy, and so now you're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, a Super Bowl level quarterback, a guy everybody was obsessed with as the guy who was going to replace Tom Brady. Bill Belichick was obsessed with Jimmy Garoppolo enough to try to run Tommy out of town the first time, right?
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and others told players like Eric Armstead, I feel like I have to run every single route now because the ball might be coming to me, even if I don't think, based on the play that's called and what the pre-snap look is, I'm going to be open. That was George Pickens' problem in Pittsburgh, because he knew it was one field read stuff that the Mitchell Trubisky's, the Justin Fields, even Russ, once him and Artie started fighting and Tomlin put the hammer down, it was going to be one or half field read. Sorry, not one field read. That doesn't even a thing. But half field read and get the ball out. Don't throw it in the middle of the field if at all possible. Make that one field read, first touchdown, first down, get down, right? Very simple stuff. For the first time ever, George Pickens is going to run the whole route tree. We know CeeDee Lamb, regardless of who under center, is going to go to bat on every damn play. Ferguson, every damn play. And now you're talking about culture surrounding talent with the ability to keep that pocket clean. And all I'm asking for, the only world that I want to live in, is where Dak gets to play 18 weeks healthy, with his weapons healthy around him, with the ability to be kept clean most of the time. He's absolutely going to get punched in the face. There's going to be a 50-50. There's going to be a 500 ball interception here and there. But we are all dying to see this man who is probably 212, looking like 1975 Arnold Schwarzenegger on a comeback, about to take the Mr. Olympia stage.
Yeah, he's dialed.
He's locked in.
Yeah, he's taking this off season as serious as he's taken any other. I think his fitness, his physique is going to the next level. But more importantly than that, I think Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton year 2 are huge factors here. I think the coaching staff having a better idea of how to create space and easy opportunities for your quarterback is huge here. I don't know if Dak can improve physically. I think he's just trying to hold off father time with his physique. But I think the Cowboys realized, hey, in 2023, what was the difference here? We had a healthy Cooks. We had Gallup still competing. And, I think he only put up 400 or 500 yards, but at least he threatened the defense, made some deep catches and would make those classic Michael Gallup catches. But then they had Tony Pollard, a guy who could catch the ball out of the backfield. Last year, you took all that away, put a rookie left tackle out there. That to me, that was the biggest difference, is just the overall quality and professionalism of his receiving weapons and the play of his left tackle. The year 2022, Dak led the NFL in picks, even though he only played 12 games. Tyron Smith only played 4 games that year.
Right.
So to me, left tackle is an on and off button for Dak getting too much pressure. And based on what I can tell, Tyler Guyton is going to be much better in year 2 than what he was in year 1.
So when you're talking about 2023, one of the things that's so fascinating about it is I think everyone remembers that was the year that CeeDee Lamb said, "I'm him," right? That it's him, Jefferson, Chase. Like, if you're having the conversation about NFL wide receiver 1, you better put some respect on CeeDee Lamb's name, right?
Yeah.
135 catches on 181 targets, 1750 and 12. Like, let's go. What's funny is, you and others are so quick to bring up Pollard, who was and still is a very interesting player. But that year, 2023, even though Pollard did creep over at the very end, 1,000 yards, he did catch 55 balls, but he only did about 300 yards worth of work, and he did not catch a receiving touchdown. And when you look back at that year and you talk about Gallup, you were dead ass with Gallup around 400. And we talked about Brandon Cooks contributing, but Cooks really contributing on a per catch basis, 8 touchdowns on 54 catches, but only 650 yards. Ferguson making the Pro Bowl, only 10.7 per catch. What's going to be really interesting about this year is a healthy Ferguson, a healthy GP. They've never had a combination as good as Amari Cooper is and young CeeDee Lamb. GP from a skill set perspective and CD entering his prime, which is what's crazy about this based on their age. I think we got to, speaking of...
Man, great point, New Bear. Dak never really had even prime Dez. He takes over in 2016. Dez is getting hurt. He was still pretty good, but he was no longer peak Dez. And then they tried to rebuild the receiving core. You had a tight end like Dalton Schultz. Like, Dak has never had this level of weapon. He's never had a good defense and a good running game when he arrives in the playoffs. Like, it's just insane how, people like Terry Bradshaw or whoever continue to criticize Dak, based on this idea that he can't win in the playoffs when, he is asked to do effectively more with less than any of the quarterbacks that he's being compared to. And, I just bring it back to the organization because I think that's the most important thing to focus through here. So you don't end up blaming your best players who are doing everything they can, but they just can't overcome, organizational incompetence. I think I would call how they team build and hope to win a Super Bowl. But, in the end, you do have to acknowledge Terry Bradshaw is kind of right, because the Cowboys shouldn't have really done this deal, and they did it in a way that they're not going to be able to get out of until it's basically over. Like, there's no outs on this deal as he hits 32 with a significant injury history. New Bear, I guess in that way, Terry Bradshaw is right.
It's funny because if you literally Google Terry Bradshaw hates everyone, you get everything from a Reddit Steelers thread about why he dislikes Pittsburgh to Facebook NFL memes about how he has a strong dislike for everybody, to the U.S. Sun talking about how Terry himself looked at the rest of his Fox NFL crew and said, "Why am I upsetting everyone?" So if you're going to talk about personality, this isn't like a one-off thing. Like, Terry Bradshaw is going to piss some people off, right? I mean, he's the Raging Cajun stuff is no joke with him. And he's a fascinating dude, and that's why people pay attention when he talks, because you kind of never know what's going to come out of his mouth. And you have to respect, you have to appreciate, we bitch, moan, and complain that we go in front of these lockers and they say nothing, or they give you the company line and they say this, Belichick, we're on to Cincinnati, whatever the case may be. And like, guys who say stuff then get raked over the coals too. And you can't have it both ways.
But this, to me, this is like, I'm not trying to have it both ways. I'm not interested in anything Terry Bradshaw has to say. I think he's way past his prime as a broadcaster. And I do wonder if like the years and the head hits are starting to catch up with him.
Well, that's no kidding aside. He definitely has some health issues and is dealing with some stuff. I think there's also, when you get to a certain point and you see, a number like 60 and how far out, like you said, with the Zeke contract, where I, as a quote unquote outsider, right, as someone who's, you talk about my relentless optimism with this team. And for me, I just always come back to, baseball's better when the Yankees and Dodgers are good. Basketball's better when the Lakers and Celtics are good, right? Like, think about how much better the NBA was when Chicago was good. It wasn't just Jordan. It was that there was some other place that we'd never heard from before. And it was rich and it was interesting. The tapestry of the league is better because of it. And the one way that even someone like me trying to look at things, 30 to 100,000 global feet, is that they don't just set and reset the market. They set and reset it so much so that nobody touches it for a half a decade or more.
Yeah, and that's tough. I think that is one definite shortcoming in how they go about their business. That, I've been thinking a lot about this Dak contract situation and how the Cowboys could win a Super Bowl this offseason. And tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but I don't know if they can win unless they have a quarterback who's truly elite on a rookie deal, because once you start paying these guys, okay, they're going to make a 10 to 15% mistake. Is it engagement farming or just bad negotiating? I don't know. They're not going to do free agency because they're going to say, we got to pay our own guys. So if you go on a great run drafting players, that's going to eat up all their cap. And they're not going to have any money left to trade for guys or sign free agents. So maybe it's not just quarterback. Maybe they need to have a quarterback and an edge or wide receiver or corner all on their rookie deals in order to get enough good players on their team to win the Super Bowl.
So one of the things that's often lost, in these contracts, these rookie contracts, particularly the NFL rookie contracts, is that people forget that it takes a couple more years for the really crooked numbers to affect what you do. And I'll give you an example. Jalen Hurts is a rookie 2020, right? So 20, 21, 22, 23, right? He's a second round pick. So that's 4 years of team control. And then he signed the 5-year, $255 million contract. And you go, how in the world are the Philadelphia Eagles building this roster with a $55 million quarterback? And you go, well, when you really break it down, his cap hit this year's 20. Last year, it was only 14. It was under 14. Next year, it's still only 32, 2027.
And the Cowboys were able to do this a lot in Dak's second contract, but now they've pushed so much into the future that they have to push this year's contract into just to get it respectable.
Right.
If they didn't do that, it'd be like $100 million.
So when you look at some of these big number guys, whether it's, Allen got paid or Burrow gets paid or, Mahomes gets paid, a lot of these teams they're stretching it. There's provisions. There's some Bobby Bonilla day, some Shohei Ohtani type stuff going on where they might be paying these guys in perpetuity. But at the very least, Mahomes' contract was like 10 years, right? It's a different deal than when you look at these over 4 and 5 and 6. And I think this is going to be a really interesting tell with what happens with Micah, not just the dollar amount, but the length, because his camp is reporting he wants that shorter contract to get into his third contract when he's entering what should be his physical prime. The question that you asked was, could the Cowboys win without a rookie contract quarterback or a rookie contract at those top 3 impact positions? And I think this year we're going to get the best version of the closest thing to an answer that we're going to get in our lifetime. Because if they don't win right now, then the only choice is to enter a mode similar to what the Pittsburgh Steelers have done for the past 2 years, where you're going hunting for a young guy with athletic traits and a veteran who has won before and is maybe diminishing, but the two of them can kind of battle it out, like with Russ and Justin Fields last year. Or you let them, you jettison them both, and you bring in Aaron Rodgers at the end of time to say, hey, let's go for one more run and let's see what you got, because we have this defense, right? The thing that's really challenging with the Cowboys right now is that the injury luck that we've talked about is related to catastrophic stuff. It's not just ACL tears where it's a clean ACL we'll see in 9 months. It's an ACL, an LCL, a PCL, both meniscus. There's complications. There's a second surgery. There's an infection. There's all these things that with everyone else where you have questions. The one place right now where you only have one question is the offense, because the only real question is that running back room. And you're seeing things every day that are breaking where you're going, Javonte Williams is going to be him, or Miles Sanders is going to have a career resurgence, or someone actually did a montage about Barry Sanders runs because him and Jaden Blue are close enough to be in the same size, and you're hoping, right?
Yeah.
And what Dak's going to get this year is skill set guys that he's never had before, and 3 first-round picks with what should be a really good 5, 6, 7 up front, and a coach who's offensive-minded, who wants to do different things with personnel to dictate tempo, dictate terms to the other team. And you have a second tight end who's a second-round draft pick, and another guy who's a headbanger if you want to do some 12 and 13 extended. And I know we're going to get into this a little bit, but you got, that it's not just the burnt orange burner. The fastest guy on the team is somebody that everybody wants to see the ball, hopefully when he's not running from police. There's just a lot of really good stuff happening. If he gets any answers after Micah signs from Eberflus getting the other side right, and you head in relatively healthy to what we're assuming is a postseason run, well, before we even get there, before we even get to what might be, all these people having all these feelings and getting in all their, historic matchups, especially if it's the 49ers on the other, or the Packers on the other side of it, right? Those color combinations that we all want to see right before our heart breaks in half, is the talent, the length, the speed is as much as he's had at any time while he's been QB1 of this team.
Yeah, and I'm sure because of that, there's going to be explosive numbers. Like, the only thing that should stop him from possibly winning MVP is the team win total. Like, MVP usually
Joe Burrow last year.
Yeah. Maybe that happens. Maybe they're 8-9 or 9-8 or something like that. But I do think Dak is going to have numbers that would put him in the top 5 of the MVP discussion. We'll just see if they have the wins, they're required to get there. But as you were saying that, man, it just made me think of how they do have a lot of good players under rookie contracts. I mean, you look at Micah still, and Tyler Smith, and Deron Bland, and then you have to include George Pickens in that as well. Like, his number is only $3 million. It's there for the taking. I think that they can get some answers on defense.
You know what's on the other side of that, though, is you've joked about it, and I'm interested probably in Saturday more from a quarterback perspective. I mean, Arch Manning and what he is set to do in Austin, and what is set to happen whenever he decides to leave Austin, right? But then go back and look at Trevor Lawrence, go back and look at Deshaun Watson, and those are just Clemson quarterbacks. Forget all the guys that you reach for, Trey Lance, anyone, right? Like, the hit rate on these quarterbacks is so hit. And
I think it terrifies Jerry. It terrifies Jerry, drafting a first-round quarterback. Now the rookie salary scale, they're going to make over $10 million. And if they're terrible, he's just like, crap. I think that's why he hasn't drafted a guy first round since Troy Aikman.
Yeah, and let's not forget that, when you go find these guys like Dak, they bungled that whole thing too, because unlike the way the 49ers were set to kind of do war with Purdy before they ultimately paid him and they let it play out as long as it could, they also, with Dak, there were ways, and you can look back at it over time with the franchise tag, there were ways where they could have jumped on this earlier. There were all these different, coulda, woulda, shouldas. And then not only did they do it wrong the first time, they did it wrong the second time. And they just kept overpaying. And it was almost just like, man, how could you disagree with the general when you talk about, engagement, farming, and all the other reasons? Because there was no reason to screw up, make a mistake, and then almost do it again on purpose.
It's wild. It is. I think there's something to be said for, he wants everybody to be talking about it. That's why he likes to reset the market. We have the top paid quarterback. We have the top paid edge. That's just more mentions. To me, there's no doubt in my mind. All right. That's a good 25 minutes on our top topic. Thank you, Terry Bradshaw, for, CTEing your way to another How About Wow topic here. Up next. on the Sunday show. I'm going to try share screen. I don't know if I have enough compute power or internet to do this, but there's a shot. Cavante Turpin arrested. I'm glad to have an excuse to talk about him. We'll talk about, the two misdemeanors that he was arrested on, released on $1,500 bond. But I think he's set to have a huge year, New Bear. It already had 900 return yards last year, averaged 33 a return. That's the second most since 1970, bro. And the NFL. So I guess my main takeaway is I hope this doesn't take away from the season he's about to have, because the NFL made touchbacks 35. The NFL believes return rates could be as high as 70% this year. And now kickers are going to be really incentivized to land that baby in the landing zone. I don't imagine teams want to give it to you at the 35 where you're 2 first downs away from being in field goal range with the way that kicks are going. Like, kickers are making more than 60% of 57-yard and up now. So it's just crazy. So my bet would be Turpin's about to take 2 or 5 of these things to the house this year. There's new rules on blockers and coverage that are going to facilitate longer returns. So, I mean, there is a lot to be excited about with Cavante Turpin. And by the way, before I get your thoughts on this, New Bear, you really can't make this up. Last year, Cavante Turpin had 420 yards of receiving yardage.
Yeah. Yeah. And
sorry, couldn't help myself on the pun. I know in previous eras we'd make a really big deal out of like an athlete being caught with a firearm and marijuana, and we talk like he was the second coming of Tony Montana. But these are two things that by themselves could be legal in a lot of NFL markets. They're misdemeanors, so I guess it's a little bit embarrassing for him. And I hope it doesn't take away his off season. Time to get focused, right?
Well, what I want to know is I saw something going around on Twitter that I haven't been able to verify just yet, that there was a report that said that his response was, "Ain't this Texas?" or something to that effect, like where he thought he was good doing what he was doing. And,
you're good with the gun, but if you have the gun with the weed, especially if you have priors, I know there was a domestic thing with him in college, but
the only thing that I always wonder about this stuff is, like, if I had a couple $1,000,000, you would never see me at Super Beer World. There would be someone going, my fridge would be stocked, and you would never see, just because I would never even want, because there's some black and white that has as many of the guys who let people go, there's as many other ones who want to be the guy that writes that ticket. And then if you don't have something licensed and you live in another state or you tread, like, why would you even take that risk? And that's the thing about
you can't leave the house with those two things in your car.
The thing about it's
being in Texas, there are a lot of people that do. In Texas right now, there might be 1 million cars with weed and firearms in it. At least, like, every other car has a firearm, and there's a lot of marijuana. I think this is just a law quirk, though. I can't say, like, Cavante Turpin, the worst thing he did was bad risk management.
Right.
Right.
The thing that's so wild about Turpin is, you remember him at TCU, right? Where they were good. They were in big games and he was making big time plays. And when you look back, his college stats aren't that much different as a receiver than what you're talking about last year with him in the NFL. And I was actually surprised, because I just remember seeing him in highlight after highlight after highlight. And I just wanted to look back and see him have, like, 400 or 500 catches, because he played 4 years at TCU, and that's just not the case. I mean, really, when you look back over, he had some injuries and he didn't play, full seasons in 2 of the 4 years. But in the 2 years, one of them, he's a freshman and he goes for like 650 and 8. And, obviously he's returning kicks and making plays that way too. But even as a junior, it was only like 41 for 401. It was really, really underwhelming, because a lot of the big plays, just like they have so far in the pros, came in the kick return. But what I've seen from Cowboys Nation so far in Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the different places where his name gets mentioned, it's a 68-yard slant. He looks like he's on Turbo and Grand Theft Auto. That was a bad joke or a bad pun. Excuse me, rowdies. But all kidding aside, like,
I don't think there's cannabis in Grand Theft Auto, at least the ones I played.
Cowboys Nation just coming back around on this, being like, oh, I remember McCarthy would go and have take him eat 3 cheeseburgers before he gave Turpin the ball again. And I'm just like, I went back and watched some of the games, and Turpin would have like a 25-yard play on a bubble screen or a house call, and then you wouldn't see him again until he returned a punt or a kick. And it was just like, man, if you're one of those guys who's, he's 5'8", 153 pounds. I mean, this is one of those dudes who he needs things to go right for him to have a job, right? Like over time.
And he's got to be a yak guy. I think there's a lot to it. He's so slight, and he's got to be a yak guy. Do you want to risk that 90 times a season? Wouldn't he get broken in half eventually? I think we got some packages. But the other thing is he doesn't run the routes or go get the ball like a receiver does. So along with him having to be a yak guy, you got to get him the ball and block everything up. And at that size, is that the most efficient thing you can call right now? I think there's a lot of challenges for his game.
Yeah, you and I we've been talking a lot about, whether it's Tolbert, whether it's Turpin, whether it's Mingo, out of left field almost, because it seems like the George Pickens trade, I talked to some buddies in Charlotte about how they saw what they threw away in terms of draft capital and roster spots on making the move for Mingo, and they almost had to make the move for Pickens. And then you go, how does a guy who's that size and that speed and that freak, he had really good college tape too. And then you go, well, I mean, it is Lane Kiffin. It is one-on-one, and in Sunday, everybody's one of them dudes, right?
But see, if I'm going to give the ball to somebody on a jet sweep, or I'm going to get a guy a bubble, I'd rather have it be Mingo than Turpin. I got some stuff in mind for Turpin, and I love his role in the kick return game. But and now we got a downfield guy in Pickens. So what is Turpin's role other than special teams, which he's great at? I don't think I'd rather have anybody else. Is Duvernay as good? I don't think so.
Well, if they're gonna deliver on this promise of Jaden Blue being as good of a pass catcher as he is, and have him run, wide receiver tree, and you're gonna do some, you can come out in 10 personnel, but then have him motion into a 5 wide empty set, and otherwise, do things with Blue in really any look that you want to. I mean, Texas Sark runs all the Sunday stuff. The question with Blue, the only reason that Jaden Blue is a 5th-round pick, the only reason that we're wondering about him is because he had fumbleitis. I mean, there was a point where you looked at his numbers in modern college football history, and he's the worst running back ever. And then, you've brought up that, he didn't cough one up for the last 6, 7, 8 games. But then also, you get into the college football playoff and you go, why is Trey Wisner still starting? Or why is Jaden Blue not getting touches in games that matter? And my point is always, he made 2 house calls as a receiver. So even if he doesn't touch it but dude, let's not forget that Sark started a 7th-round NFL draft pick over Arch Manning. Like, something in the water in Austin, right? Something doesn't add up all the way in Austin.
Hey. Yeah. In Austin, or just, it's weird, like what a college Tony Pollard at Memphis,
right?
Same deal. You tell me this guy shouldn't have had the ball like 30 times a game, 15 runs, 15 catches. What was that coach thinking? But he had Daryl, I forget his name, went to the Rams, but another great weapon,
Henderson.
So it's like, what's that?
You're talking about Henderson?
Yeah, it's tough, and it's weird, and there's obviously different dynamics in the college games and the pro games, but I see that happen in basketball all the time.
Sure.
Like Derek Lively,
or like the foreign guys. The foreign guys are over in France averaging 4 points and 2 rebounds, and all of a sudden they're an NBA All-Star.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't believe in Wemby for 1 second. He was shooting like 29% in some D2 French league, and now he's Wemby. I want my kids in his shoes.
He might be the next GOAT. Okay, here we go. Up next on How About Wow. There was an update here from Jeremy Fowler. I guess I have a CBS Sports story up, but it was ESPN's Jeremy Fowler says that this is a relaxed situation. The latest on Micah Parsons, he said, when I talk to people involved, they're like, look, it's a lull in the summer right now. Not a lot going on. People are on vacation. Team officials were out on the beach somewhere. Once they reconvene for training camp, Dallas will probably lock in on this a little bit more. Typically, they do their deals late in the calendar, and he's right about that. I mean, the Cowboys waited on CD last year, Zach Martin the year before. One of my first training camps, it was Tyron Smith waiting on a deal. I find this hilarious, though, because Stephen Jones is always saying player acquisition is 365-day-a-year business, and then you have Fowler calling. They're like, listen, we're on vacation, okay? I think this is the same front office that goes on family vacation often the first week of free agency because it lines up with their grandkids' spring breaks.
I think there's some Cowboys fans who would say they've been on family vacation for 30 bleeping years.
Yeah, and I love it. If you just want to be an owner and enjoy the Robert Kraft lifestyle, go ahead, go on vacation, go to Orchids of Asia, do whatever you want, man. But when you want to be a GM too, you got to be hungry. We see how the Eagles are hungry. We see how the Niners are hungry. We see how the Rams and Buccaneers are hungry. We see Andy Reid. He continues as he approached 70 years old to be one of the great innovators, challenging his coaches to find the best plays from high school and college. We know Andy Reid's hungry. How many conference championship games has the dude made?
Are you going to you're going to give me another excuse to talk about cheeseburgers in the same show?
Right? Yeah. I was hoping you'd go there, but I mean, you see, so many ways that teams can be hungry, and I just don't think it applies to the Cowboys right now. I don't think they're trying to win the championship the hardest.
Can I tell you something that I've more shocked myself in the monkeys banging cymbals in my head to say this than probably anything I've said so far talking to you about the Cowboys is that I just think it's a different time. I think it's a different era. My stance has softened on this tremendously, even in recent weeks, and here's why. Micah's at the beach. Who's there with him? Micah's out at the movies or bowling. You just keep seeing him with the guys. And I think this would be different 20 and 30 years ago. Hell, it might even be 5, 8, 10 years ago. These guys are training together and they're doing the damn thing regardless of what happens with the contract. He's going to get paid. Everyone knows that. He's not eating cheeseburgers. He's not down drinking Mai Tais in Italy with Gandolfini, or partying in Kansas City eating barbecue that he's going to have to sweat out with Andy Reid. Like, this is a guy who's out there doing the work and some of the stuff. This is why I would be regaled enough to believe you in the engagement farming stuff. It would be different if Micah reports to camp and he's 282 and he's Charles Barkley playing games with the 76ers. It would be different if the videos weren't coming out where every single guy.
Yeah, Micah's part of this is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Micah's part of this is fine. I think it's the front office.
Oh, I thought you were leaning on Micah a little bit for a second.
No,
I misinterpreted that.
No, this is a Cowboys front office that just doesn't want it enough. Mike is good enough that at least in his athletic prime, until he hits 30 or 31, he's going to be one of the best edges. I hope the Cowboys are planning for that, and move on at the right time, like they did D Ware. I think they might.
You don't want to see him like Pittsburgh is with TJ Watt. Go flip him for picks.
Are they going to do that?
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother story about you said, a couple weeks ago that, championship teams would do that. And I think the difference is that Micah still is ahead of that prime.
Yeah. I mean, at 30 or 31, if somebody wants to give me first round picks for my star edge, my star running back, linebacker, safety, I mean, those are defensive tackle. Those are classic positions that age out really quickly. I guess I'm really only hanging on to like wide receivers, maybe corners and quarterbacks past 31, 32, thinking they're going to continue to be great. That's just good asset management. But, I think the point I was making was just about this Cowboys front office. Like, how are you putting your team in position to succeed? Is it money? Is it finding the best coaches? They're really just thinking we're going to outdraft everybody.
Yeah, but I think part of the problem though is where we are right now and what they need. So I think we would both agree that they gotta go add a corner, right? Because just to allow everyone who's coming back from an ACL injury alone to take the proper amount of time to be healthy. Like, I don't care if Trayvon Diggs can dunk, windmill dunk in August. He needs to be able to cover anyone in January. So go get me Gilly Lock. Go get me Mike Hilton. Go get me one of these guys who's out there. The problem is Gilly Lock's out there saying I'm only coming back for the right situation. I'm not coming back for the money. I still love the game. I have something to offer. He wants to be able to win. That's why Jair Alexander is in Baltimore. Him and Lamar Jackson are best friends going back to Louisville, and he took an incentive-laden deal. Jerry would have had to overpay for Jair Alexander, which is why okay, fine, go play with Lamar. But if Gilly Lock comes back and signs with pick your poison, where would he go? Detroit, San Francisco, one of the other frontrunners, Philly, one of the other frontrunners who's just adding and saying, we're going to just even if he only plays 50, 60% of the snaps for us, nobody else can have this guy, right? Or they go.
That's what champions do. That's something Jerry used to do.
You go grab Mike Hilton because that was the role Cooper DeJean played, and now he's cornerback 1 or 2. That. You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about the Eagles. I'm saying if the Eagles do that, right? Because let's not forget what happened. DeJean wasn't playing, and then the defense went through the roof when he stepped in, and we all saw what he did on the game's biggest stage. So, as we get into this and we look at it, and you're talking about, being on some beach somewhere, Margaritaville shit, then if they don't make one more move, I will be pissed because you and I talked about this, and we just released something that we're going to reshare here post holiday. I wrote a little kid letter, to Santa Claus, to the North Star, if you will, and I was just sitting here furious after the Minka trade, thinking to myself, look at what Pittsburgh gave up to go get what they wanted. Like, it cost something to get something. And it was like literally like break that wishbone in two. It felt weird. And you see these tribute videos with the Charlie Puth songs. Like, I'll see you again, Minka. I mean, don't make me hold up I've been in some wars on eBay trying to take advantage of the market. Let me tell you that. But, just circling back around, if they don't make one more move, I'm going to be pissed because he said moves. George Pickens was part 1, and there is work to be done.
There is a lot of work to be done. Like, this is year 1 under a new defensive coordinator. You haven't fixed your run defense. I think defensively, the only way out this year is to have your young pass rushers be amazing and take the pressure off the corners. Would Gilmore make them a little bit better? Yes, I think so. He's probably better than what Kaiir Elam is going to do for you. But I think it's like just an overall commitment to changing the culture of the defense, to being tough, to finding better run defenders. Because, I did a video about this, I guess it was July 3rd from Cannon Beach, about 5-hour drive west on the coast. I'm up in the high desert right now on the other side of the mountains in the Bend area. But I was talking about in that video is just how much Newberry they had to run cover 1 and cover 3 under Dan Quinn, and then Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer wants to go cover 2. He couldn't do it much last year, at least as much as I think you need to take away the big plays. And as a result, the Cowboys gave up tons and tons of big plays, and they couldn't stop the run either. Even when they loaded the box, they couldn't stop the run. So, I think this defense has massive issues that the front office, if they're serious about contending, shouldn't be taking any days off. You should be scouring every corner of the world for any sort of solution, whether that's coaching or personnel.
The other thing that someone like Gilmore, someone like Hilton, particularly Gilmore, I mean, he's somebody who you have familiarity with because he's already been there. He's system diverse, he's scheme diverse, and he was asked to do something different in Minnesota a lot than what he made his money doing, what he was a defensive player of the year doing for Bill Belichick. And, when you talk about Eberflus wanting to have guys who are going to play with their eyes on, he's such an instinctive guy. He's such a heady player. Maybe he has lost a step. He's still long. He's still smart. And being able to pass that stuff on to basically a 2.0 type body type in Kaiir Elam, right? You're talking about getting the most bang for your buck.
Oh, yeah.
And really getting,
he's so well respected.
Let's teach Kaiir Elam how to be an NFL corner. You think Stephon Gilmore can do that?
He walked into the facility a couple of years ago and was instantly one of the most respected guys out there. Just the way that he talks to people, it just exudes leadership. This is the ideal trait. So I can't pick between him and Hilton. I think you need both. Hilton, one of the best slot corners, good tackler, move Bland to the outside. And then you bring Gilmore into the other side. Now you have Ravel and Elam as depth, not on guys that you're absolutely depending on. And if you have injuries, you're fine. And if your pass rushers do get home a ton and you can play with a lead, I can see a path to victory, at least till you get to January.
I mean, you asked the question basically at the beginning of this segment about, is it going to take the front 7, particularly the front 4, being the one that takes the pressure off of them. And if you're going to try to play 2 and really sit back, then you have to be able to stop the run. I mean, that's principal NFL defense. I mean, even college. You talk about how different colleges. I mean, if you're going to play math and you're going to play games and you're going to load the box and not stop the run, it doesn't matter if you sign any of these guys, right? There is plenty of work to be done up front as well, unless you're telling me Mozzie Smith has finally figured it out, and unless you're telling me that this rookie class is going to come in and take it by storm. And unless you're telling me that, Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn are going to be, these career Nirvana type guys, right? One with the traits and one without, who come into this system, play a certain kind of way, play behind and around certain kind of other players, and then become the best versions of themselves. But I mean, you're asking a lot, because you're asking that at every level of the defense. I think the more you can do here coming into and out of Oxnard, because let's be honest, I mean, you're not coming in and asking Mike Hilton to do anything he hasn't done. You might ask Stephon Gilmore to come in and be a little bit versatile, but he's a guy who's proven that he can do that. So those two guys in particular that we're talking about, it's going to come down to the check. It's going to come down to the dollar amount, right? Because one of the reasons, there's two reasons right now that guys are still out there for the most part. They
want to win, they want the money.
Well, they're injured coming back, and you're waiting to see how they look, or they want too much damn money, right?
Yeah. Or they're waiting for somebody else to get hurt.
And then they're fodder. They're guys who are maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 year vets, and for one reason or another, you're like, how can I get this dude in here to take some tread off the tires of my guys, right? So I don't know. This is going to be a really interesting couple of weeks, because viral TikTok videos become on field, all 22 film for real. And as we start seeing who's on the field and who's not, you start putting people on PUP. You start telling me someone's not playing for 4, 5, 6 weeks, then this stuff only ratchets up.
It will. And hopefully the Cowboys will be serious about, finding players if they do have those injuries. Right now, depending on Ravel and Elam, I think is potentially a decisive neglect. And then, it's not just that they can't stop the run with their defensive tackles or their safeties, but like everybody on the defense either is playing hero ball on the front, can't scrape, can't get off blocks, can't come downhill fast enough, can't secure tackles. Like I think they have a massive like roster wide problem tackling. So even if you would go get a player or two, I think you're still talking about multiple. Like, how long does it take to rebuild an offensive line, you think, effectively in the NFL? 3 or 4 years probably, until you can start to see results. I think the same thing will be true with the tackling.
Some of that's mitigated, though, by these guys all basically being the same age. When you start talking about, first round, these guys are going to be going and playing video games. They're going to be going to Taco Bell, like whatever it is these guys do. I mean, Micah takes the guys bowling. We're going to start hearing stories emerge about what Booker is doing, because you're going to see him try to emerge as a leader, or some little whispery thing's going to come out, where they're all doing some goofy thing, whether it's Buffalo Wild Wings or whatever. They're going to be somewhere on Thursday night watching the game, having beers, eating chicken wings, and everyone's going to be writing about it. And it's just a question of who's the ringleader, because that's how offensive line rooms work, right? It's whose house or it's whose restaurant, because we all know what's on the menu. It's as many as you can have of whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited to see these guys come together and lift each other up. I think the most special thing, but the offensive line room in particular, is you make jokes about how they have to be the smartest because they're the ugliest or the most out of shape, or all the shit that we take. Being the big uglies up front, and we get nicknames, after animals that you wouldn't want to be nicknamed after, even the ones who are good. And this is one of those groups that has that kind of chance to be special based on traits, pedigree, and also just the way they're talking, the way that they're sitting in front of cameras with their tongues stuck in the side of their mouth and their teeth grinding and their bodies looking different, and chasing down little kids at their own football camps. I mean, this is a group that's wired one kind of way, and it's going to be really neat to see them at the end of the day put it all together.
How about this, Cowboys?
All right, up next here on How About Wow. Did you want to look at this? The latest Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah, so this got me a hell of a lot more excited than the TikTok stuff.
Hard, and he's moving good, dexterity.
Yeah, this is legit. I'm not sure. I think this is a law. This is Law Nation.
Trayvon Diggs,
like he chiseled in. I think this was up on Trayvon's Instagram or something.
One way or another.
I think
Diggs
to me, though, this is just more of the same.
Smooth.
Like, it's not stopping suddenly, and it's not changing direction.
Yes,
so I think he even talked about that here for a second.
Can't wait for this season to pop off.
Should I turn the volume up?
We're going to have the best DB class in the league.
You can hear it on your side?
Bland.
Okay.
No Kyer.
I can't hear it on my side, so I'll go ahead and pause it.
But don't sleep on Diggs, y'all. I'm seeing something, bro. And that's the best coverage.
Okay, so I was looking at this injury, and it's a microfracture. He's coming off an ACL, and from what I can tell with these new bear, the doctors, the medical staff, everybody's going to be telling him, hey, because you had an ACL the previous calendar year, you should wait longer with this one. So the surgery wasn't until January 28th. Like if he hadn't had the ACL, they'd be looking at 9 to 12 months for a high-end athlete. So that puts you like what, October 28th? Yeah, that's how that works. To get to 9 months. I do think it's possible he doesn't play at all this year.
So this is one of the reasons that I'm really in on them going and making one more move about the cornerback room specifically. And even this, I would love to see if Mozzie Smith has it or not. I would love to give him one more shot because he's for all intents and purposes, he's doing everything the right way. He's also been asked to do some things that I don't think he's necessarily capable of. I played with a guy, Dwayne Robertson at Kentucky, was the number 4 pick in the draft, hugely disruptive, Warren Sapp 2.0 type of guy, had an injury, a bad knee coming in, and got the money, got paid, and maybe there were some things that went with that. But ostensibly, the Jets tried to make him a nose tackle, and he was my size with longer arms. He had no business, being set up over. He's Warren Sapp. He's 3 technique. You got to go let a dog hunt, right? And you see this all the time, which is why you talk about whether it's Saturday and guys not having the numbers you think, or the playing rotations, or Sunday and guys being asked to do stuff that they just weren't put on this earth to do. And one of the things about the Diggs family, and there is no joke here about TikTok or any of the other things that we've seen with his brother, but his brother did have a devastating knee injury of his own. I mean, there is something in the makeup of these guys and their 23andMe that has put them both on the chopping block and has put them both their careers in peril. And obviously, our guy in Dallas has gone, one step further than a relatively clean ACL tear. And these complicating circumstances, you talk about the modern day microfracture and the chondral graft and everything that goes into that. I mean, you're remiss if you don't say every single time that they are growing stuff in a petri dish, whether it's from another place or from out of your own body. Like, this is next level stuff. I mean, there's like Avengers level medicine happening here.
And it's in exact science, we just don't know. And then you include the fact that he did not, come back and rehab well from that first ACL, the history. Like, I don't have a lot of faith that Trayvon Diggs can be good this year. And then if you put yourself in his shoes with this organization that appears to already have one foot out the door with you, why would you come back and risk 3 in a row that would be contract ender? If I'm going to have to do a prove it deal next year anyway, because I'm probably not going to be anywhere close to 100% when I come back from this, I might just want to sit out, get my clean bill of health, peace out to an organization that's not showing me any love, and see if I can get a contract next spring.
Outside of, what's this guy's backup career plan, and not trying to be funny about that, I also want to know, if you didn't take it that seriously last time around, how much do you love, where's your head at about this game?
And it might have been his wake-up call. Like, he's doing a YouTube series saying the Cowboys were wrong and my rehab is the best. Maybe this is motivating him to show everybody that I can absolutely do this. But even if that's the case, I think he misses half the season, and he's coming back off of a microfracture. We saw in basketball several times 15, 20 years ago was a very common surgery. The players just don't have their spark. They don't have their quickness or their balance or their strength until, much longer. It's usually like a 24-month recovery back to who you were if you get there.
Amari Stoudemire, Chris Webber, the first couple guys that really come to mind where you talk about freaky, bouncy guys. Amari got further back than Chris did. I think Chris was a little older when he had his, and he was still an all-star, but he was a completely different kind of player than he was, pre-injury. The thing that I was building toward about, how much do you love ball, and I love you coming over the top and talk about it, being his wake-up call. Let's not forget that teams do not like guys, regardless of where they are, whether they're a rookie or a vet, whether they're a superstar or the last guy on the roster. Teams do not like guys doing their own thing with their own guys. So that absolutely plays into this. I mean, the New England Patriots didn't like Tom Brady having his own guy. So let's just maybe a grain of salt relative to the Cowboys maybe having beef, or there being some mixed messages. At the very least, they could have been on family vacation.
Yeah, they could have. You know, that's always there, dude. That's a good way to bring it full circle. I know the Cowboys players, just for Dig's side of this, they don't feel like the Cowboys training staff is enough. You know,
well, that's the theme in the DFW
Yeah.
with your professional sports
yeah,
organization.
we got a lot of that going on, and that's unfortunate when that happens. The guys with the Cowboys have been here for a long time, and they're great, right? But the Cowboys players just feel like maybe some of them don't talk to them the way they want to be talked to. You know,
And
like
that's a real thing. That's a real
Yeah.
thing.
or that there aren't enough guys there. Like I've heard Cowboys have to leave and go to one of our sponsors, Elements Massage, to get some massage therapy because there's not somebody available to help them
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
the start. I find that to be weird.
I've been through some weird stuff myself between like school, team, parents, insurance, like going back to when I was in some of these situations, or between what the doctor said versus what the doctor who did your surgery versus what the team doctor said. And that's why a lot of times guys will not have the surgery done with the team. They'll go have an independent third party, at the very least get a second opinion, and then ultimately have that surgery done somewhere else, because you see these things where guys have complications, and it's them versus the team and in a lawsuit, or versus the school in a lawsuit, because it's a career ending or a career defining and detracting element. And it's a shame that it has to get that ugly, because I've been in places where you get rolled up on and you sprain an MCL. You can play through that, especially as a lineman. But like when your bones are touching, or when something ain't there, like even with my thumb that I just went through, right, where like when it goes and there's nothing there to catch it, and you just know that there is some part of your body that isn't right, that you don't trust, and you're thinking all the
Can't
things
play like that.
all the things we talked about with Guyton, last year, being out of shape and not knowing what you're doing. Now add to that a part of your body inside of itself touching another part of you. It's like playing Operation. And you, in your head, it's just right? Like, imagine trying to block Myles Garrett like that. Imagine trying to go punt Dak Prescott like that. You can't do it.
No. How About Wow is brought to you by our friends at Harbor Lights. The QR code on screen right now. You can sign up for a free specialty lighting consultation, either at your residence or commercial. And as New Bear mentioned earlier, they do have a Christmas in July special going right now. You can save big and book your Christmas lights now, or holiday lights. You want to do Halloween, you want to do Thanksgiving. I know a lot of people love to do that 4th of July, but the permanent lighting solutions are a big deal as well. Down here in Texas, a lot of the suburban houses have them in their New Bear. I don't know if it's a big deal up there in Pittsburgh, but it is. And you can call our friends at Harbor Lighting, or go to harborenterprisesllc.com to get your quote. All right. You can read all of our stuff, get our socials and our written words at howboutwow.com. 9 weeks until week 1. I guess just 8.5 till Cowboys Eagles now, New Bear. It's getting real.
I can't wait. This is, the guys up here on the local radio, one of them played at Pitt, and he was talking about how this weekend was where he started feeling the tension as a college guy and then as a pro guy, because after, like, you don't even enjoy the 4th of July, because every hot dog, every hamburger, every firework just brings it closer that you're going to be in some college dorm room where your legs are hanging off the bed. Like, college
2 weeks.
Sorry, go ahead.
2 weeks till August 20th, my man. Dude, we got to go.
Cannot wait for because now I don't have to be in the dorm room. I got AC. I'm gonna have a little mini fan. You're gonna know exactly where to find me.
I don't know what training camps you're imagining right now, New Bear. These NFL camps these days, it's like staying in about a 4-star hotel.
Not here. Not
really?
You drive up this winding road, and it takes there. Okay, so the joke is that there isn't a straight road in West Virginia because of the mountains, and that there isn't a flat one in Pittsburgh because we have the mountains and the rivers, right? Well, going to where the Pittsburgh Steelers do training camp is like the intersection of those two things. And oh, by the way, it's at this tiny little like D3 or NAI level college. And oh, by the way, everyone goes. Nice. And it's like one of those 1-lane highway type of situations where, trying to get in and out, and there's like one little bar, on the corner that everyone watering hole.
I love it.
It's
sounds
awesome.
like Mike Tomlin and Andy Reid are holding it down for old school football training camp.
Yeah. Well, the one thing about the thing about thinking about what training camp is supposed to be and thinking about how different the football world is like there was a time when Terry Bradshaw still had all of the signals firing when they were going to training camp. It's because they'd spent the whole summer doing nothing. Yeah. Right. One of the challenges with a guy like Diggs when they get hurt is that they've been doing something every day of their lives. They've never been hurt. They don't know what it's like to just have to like press pause. And then, oh, by the way, when you come out of that surgery, things don't move.
It's like a glorified walkthrough. I think training camp is.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different.
It's just installs. And I think a lot of the guys show up in great shape, ready to rock. There's usually just a few that need to do like some sort of remedial running program, as Jason Garrett used to call it.
Remedial running, dude.
Yeah. I mean, everybody is in shape when they get there, and it's just a matter of like team meetings, installs, and not getting guys hurt. And that's why I think like attendance in Oxnard for the fans has been decreasing over the last couple of years because the fans that have gone there have been like, man, I'm not seeing much action.
Not as intense.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about the terrible tackling earlier, and a huge part of that is the limited shoulder helmets and shoulder pads, the limited. It's all in the CBA. They negotiated this into the calendar year.
And I want it that way. I'm not complaining. I don't want these guys getting hurt.
I'll tell you. So I'll tell you a story about even 20 years ago, early 2000s, when I'm in college. One of my best friends to this day is this guy we call Shrek, who's like, 6'3", 400 pounds. I mean, he was Vince Wilfork, the trajectory they were going to have him on after he won a World Bowl over in NFL Europe. Right. And he's like 6'2" and 5/8, 317. And he's like all SEC second team or preseason all SEC second team. And we're in a 4-3 and he's a game wrecking 3 technique, just going to mess people's lives up. I think he hit Dave Ragone on Sunday night the year before. I think he hit him 11 times, knocked him down 7 times. There's a picture of him where Dave Ragone literally looks like his soul has left him in the turf. It's on the cover of every magazine in the country. And we go into Louisville, we beat number 25 Louisville. We end Ragone's Heisman campaign before it even starts. The next year we got new coaches, and they tell him they want him to be 288. Because we're switching to a 3-4, and he's going to play basically like, a completely different role in like a 2-gapping, 3-4 defensive end as opposed to like a hunt and kill defensive tackle. And he's in remedial running, Jason Garrett level stuff, and then going in between practices and eating like 5,000 calories so he gains weight. Now he's going and doing the running, the punishment running, and then going and eating to just basically give, the double bird's eye. And then the coach ultimately finally gave up and was just like, fuck it,
Yeah.
Because he was going to be that stubborn. I'm more stubborn than you, old man. And that was even in the early 2000s. And we were training year round, and there was no reason to be giving guys concussions in camp.
Well, I love the transfer portal. And I know that's a conversation for another day, but I mean, that's a classic situation. Like, you're doing what?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I might go play for Louisville now, coach. Thank you.
Hey, and our recruiting guy and our tight ends coach just left, and that stuff happens now. Yeah. Unlike you've never seen anything like.
Because novel concept, I mean, college football, maybe, just maybe, it should be about giving the kids the best chance to play their sport and prepare for the future.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're Andrew Luck, you're not allowed to miss practice as an architectural major or whatever the hell it is. We're still pushing kids into comms and trying to get them to do the most bullshit version of it. It's like now we're paying these guys and we're still doing all those things that we used to do, and they're running around with their pockets full, and we're expecting them to like stay if we're a little bit mean to them. Like, I don't know. I don't even know how. Like, a couple guys I played with who are coaches right now talk about having to re-recruit your own roster year after year, and these, especially the team
sports. That's youth sports.
But when
like every coach does that,
when
they're complaining, they wanted special privileges to not have to recruit their kids every year.
When football schools, when basketball schools, when irrelevant football schools are paying $4 and $5 million for a quarterback from a non-Power 5 team, non-Power 4, I can't even keep up with it anymore.
No, it's tough.
And they're writing those checks, and then you got to go find a guy, and you're basically like, it's this, and it's ridiculous. And you saw what happened. Tennessee and UCLA basically traded quarterbacks for $3 million.
That's American capitalism at its finest, New Bear. That's what I just heard.
I just wish they would call it something other than college football. Like when you make a veggie burger, it's not a burger. Call it it's a vegetable. It's a vegetable puck. Just call it something else.
Why does college football have to be unpaid?
No. I'm not. Do not do that to me. Do not do that to me.
You did it to yourself though.
They got to get paid, and they should have been getting paid for far longer. All I'm saying
why can't a college kid get paid though? Other college students can get paid for what they're brilliant at.
You are putting words in my mouth, young man.
You said don't call it college.
No, I'm saying call it something. It needs to just be officially created or called and categorized as like the NFL minor leagues. Like we need to just disassociate this whole thing.
At a college. They're representing a college.
1,000,000,000%. Yeah. It's just not. It's not the same anymore, and it's never going to be.
I'll take the win, New Bear.
Oh, you can. If that means that the kids are getting more money, then I'm all for it. I'm for the kids getting more money. There's this thing about like Saturday used to mean the nostalgia. Saturday used to mean all the things that go with what made it different. And now the dollars and cents of it have changed it so much where, even if you're a kid from that town, if you're from Athens, Georgia, and you grow, look at what happened to some of these kids at some of these programs where they even went and they played well, and you're still recruiting over them, and you're sending them on and you're sending them out. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that either, because in this era, you have to be prepared to deal with it accordingly. And this is probably a whole nother conversation for a whole nother podcast.
It is.
All I'm saying is I was a Saturday guy my entire life, and I'll tell you why. I had no aspirations of playing for the Chicago Bears. I had aspirations of playing for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. University of Kentucky changed my life. SEC changed my life because I realized my dreams just should have been bigger the whole time. Change one thing, change everything. And all I'm saying right now is you just call it something different. It's a veggie burger isn't a burger. It's no longer college football.
All righty. Well, thank you, New Bear. Great stuff. You can get our socials, read all of our written words at howboutwow.com. And we'll be back tomorrow with more content focused on the Cowboys getting back to the glory days here on How About Wow.